EU economies are more and more interlinked. This means that it's, on the one side, easier to buy, sell, move and live abroad. It also means that when one country has major difficulties in terms of how the economy is run, then it affects the entire European Union. The financial crisis of 2008 is a good example of this, where some countries responded with a bit more difficulties to the financial crisis, and this of course had an overall impact over the EU economies and over all 28 member states. This is why the European Commission in 2010 created a process called the European Semester, which simply put is a dialogue between member states and the European Commission to help coordinate national policies to make sure that there aren't major imbalances or major economic issues in each country. It can talk on the one hand about debt, about fiscal issues, but it also talks, especially more and more recently, about social issues, about poverty and social exclusion, about the high levels of unemployment, about the importance of education and making sure that we have a well-trained and well-supported workforce. These are all matters which are talked about the European semester to avoid that we have major economic issues throughout the EU in the years to come. So the European semester is a dialogue between member states and the European Commission. To do this, the European Commission analyses each year the current state of play of policies in a wide range of areas in each country. Based on these country reports, they produce country-specific recommendations to each countries. And these recommendations outline the major barriers, but also the major, let's say, trends and what needs to be done to make sure that the country's economy goes in the right direction. And these can cover quite a broad diversity of issues. For example, in Bulgaria, the European Commission is advising the Bulgarian authorities to do more to integrate social services and employment services, in particular to help the integration in the labour market of people from disadvantaged groups, and this can include, of course, people with disabilities. And this is actually one of the topics of our conference in Varna in a few weeks' time. In Austria, they're talking about the need to do more to include quality criteria in public procurement practices. And as we know, public procurement is one of the major instruments to help fund our sector throughout Europe. This is, of course, a positive thing. And in Latvia, for instance, another example is they've acknowledged that in Latvia, people with disabilities the level of poverty of people with disabilities is increasing over the last few years, and therefore they are asking Latvian authorities to redress this through different mechanisms. Every country in Europe except Greece, who have their own mechanism, receive country-specific recommendations. We've done a summary of these recommendations, and I would really recommend that you all check them out to get a better understanding of how the EU sees your country and within which context and how that is done. It's a really interesting read. The European semester may seem like a long bureaucratic process which has no impact on your services. This is far from being the truth. What we see is that more and more member states are taking into account these recommendations and implementing them at national level. And we have to make sure that our views, your views, are also taken into account in this process to support the transition to more community-based services and to support the implementation of the UN Convention.